What day is it? Roast chicken day. In this video, I'm going to teach you 2 different ways to brine a chicken, 1 amazing barbecue chicken rub, and 6 tips that will elevate the crap out of your roast chicken. Tip number 1. Once you've figured out how to get a chicken cooked, the next hurdle is to get the skin crispy. 3 of the 6 tips today will help you get crispy skin on your chicken, and this is the first one. Get under the skin with your fingers and just separate it from the meat. This allows the skin to separate from the meat while cooking and get crispier. Tip number 2. Brining. If you were going to take one tip and use it every time you ever made chicken from now on, this is the one to choose. I'm going to teach you 2 different ways to brine a chicken, 1 dry and 1 wet. For the dry mix, you're going to mix 3 to 2 to 1 salt to baking powder to pepper. So you're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of pepper. Next, grab your chickie and spread it all over. Use the entire recipe of rub. This is enough for 1 chicken. Brining does a few magical things, the first of which is to allow the skin to get crispier. So this is our second crispy skin tip. This dry brine is especially suited to crispy skin, and it's actually adapted from a trick that's used to make chicharrones. Once you've covered your chicken in the dry brine completely, place it on a wire rack and let it sit overnight in the fridge, open air. For the wet brine, we're going to use 300 grams of salt, 150 grams of sugar, and dissolve that in 3 liters of water. So that makes it a 10% salt brine. Disclaimer, if you aren't a saltaholic like me, I recommend starting with half the salt at a 5% brine, and then you can work your way closer to 10% salt brine if you like it saltier. I like to start out with part of the volume of water as hot water because it's much easier to dissolve the salt and the sugar in, and then you top up with cold water to bring the temperature down afterwards. The wet brine does an especially good job of seasoning the actual meat itself, and it makes the chicken almost impossible to overcook. Once you've dissolved everything and you've got your full volume of water mixed in, add a few black peppercorns and a couple bay leaves just for flavor. Submerge that chickie in the brine, and then you can use this bonus trick with a Ziploc bag to keep it from floating above the brine. This also works great with pickles. Next, we're gonna put that bird in the fridge for 24 hours, just like the dry brine. 24 hours later. On the day we're gonna cook our chicken, we're gonna make a rub. So I'm gonna start off with 1.5 teaspoons or 3 grams of black pepper, 2 teaspoons or 10 grams of salt. Listen to what I say, not what I do. 1.5 teaspoons or 1.5 grams of oregano, 1.5 teaspoons or 3 grams of chili powder. Oh boy. Okay, yeah, I may have put 10 times as much in as I was supposed to. So we'll fix that. I'll continue. In fact, this is such a disaster. If you want the actual recipe, I will put it in the description. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons or 12 grams of paprika, 1 tablespoon, 8 grams of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon or 8 grams of onion powder, and I added 1 teaspoon, 2 grams of Guajillo powder, but you can just add an extra teaspoon of chili powder if you don't have that. So, once you've sorted your life out, unlike me, and made some rub, pull your chicken out of the brine and dry it extremely well. You can actually use this brine again, but just remember that once it's had a chicken in it, it basically has the shelf life of said chicken. Okay, tip number 3. Spatchcocking, and get your mind out of the gutter. This is essentially just a fancy word for flattening the chicken. All you do is grab some scissors, cut down the back of the chicken on either side of the spine to remove it, and then the breastbone just needs a good whack with a knife, and then you've got a flat bird. Tip number 4, remove the wishbone. This is super unnecessary and extra, but it makes the chicken so much easier to eat and cut up and carve when it's hot right out of the oven. So I like to do this step when the chicken is cold and raw. Tip number 5, fat release holes. So you see this part of the skin here where it's more opaque and there's a little bit of a white fat deposit under the skin? All we want to do is poke a couple dozen pinholes in the skin so that when that fat melts, it has somewhere to go and it doesn't stay under the skin and make the skin soggy. So that's the 3rd crispy skin hack. I personally like to set up shop with some tin foil and a good wire rack because that way your cleanup is almost nothing because you just throw out the tin foil and you're good to go. You know me, the less cleaning the better. Once you've got your bird all flat and poked and brined, it's time to season. So you can just use salt and pepper or any rub you like. Just remember there's already a bunch of salt because of the brining, so don't go overboard, but make sure you get full coverage. I probably went a little heavy on the rub here, and you can sort of see that some of it's loose on top. It didn't really get adhered to the chicken. Once you've got your chicken rubbed, we're gonna go somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour at 450 degrees Fahrenheit until the breast reaches 160 to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Tip number 6, the last tip, definitely last but not least, is rest your chicken. Any piece of meat that you cook needs to rest before it gets cut. What happens is it allows all the juices that have been released while cooking to reabsorb into the meat. So wait 20 minutes and that juice will stay in the meat. Cut it right away and it all flows out onto your cutting board. I recommend 20 for a chicken and double that, like 40 minutes for a really big piece of meat like a brisket, a turkey, or a large roast. Finally, time to enjoy. A free bonus tip, cutting up a chicken with scissors is actually way easier than using a knife. And it's the easiest way to portion out a chicken to feed a bunch of people. You can even go smaller if you like by cutting the breast into 3 and removing the leg from the thigh. And lastly, serve it up with whatever your little heart desires. My heart has been eating too much rich food lately, so we went with some nice roasted farmer's market vegetables. And there it is, 2 brines, a rub, 6 tips to elevate your roast chicken, and a couple bonuses. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And now for some sexy chickens.